You didn't quit because you were weak. You quit because nobody told you what consistency actually is. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what Miyamoto Musashi did that made him impossible to stop. Not motivation, not discipline, not willpower. One decision, made once, no matter what. They told you motivation. They told you discipline, told you habit stacking, morning routines, productivity systems. And you tried all of it. And it worked. For 11 days. Read that again. You didn't fail the system. The system failed to tell you the truth. Here is what nobody tells you. Consistency is not something you build. It is something you decide. Once. No negotiation, no conditions, no matter what. And the man understood this in 1600. Centuries before psychology had words for it. You have tried. More times than you can count. You woke up early. You made the plan. You felt it. This time was different. And then, life happened. One bad week, one missed day. One moment where the easy choice was right there, and the version of you that was supposed to show up didn't. That is not weakness. That is what happens when a warrior picks up the wrong weapon. The weapon was broken, not the warrior. But here is the part that will uncomfortable you. The thing that stopped you, it did not come from outside. No boss. No circumstance. No bad timing. It spoke in your own voice. It said rest, you deserve it. Start again Monday. One day won't matter. It sounded like reason, like self-care, like protection. But it was only resistance wearing a familiar face. And you listened. Because it sounded exactly like you. Here is the sequence. You know it. The alarm goes off. Command given. 3 seconds pass. Just 5 more minutes. Negotiation begins. 5 becomes 30. 30 becomes, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow comes. You start again. Same alarm. Same 3 seconds. Same voice. And somewhere deep, quieter than thought, a question forms. Why can't I trust myself? Every delayed command trains hesitation. Every broken promise weakens authority. Not someone else's authority over you. Your authority over you. Most people spend years building a perfect case for why they cannot be trusted. There was a boy, 16 years old, cold ground beneath him, bodies around, the smell of smoke still in the air. He had just survived one of the bloodiest battles in Japanese history, Sekigahara, where 70,000 men fought in a single day. He was on the losing side. The men around him were choosing death over dishonor. He chose something else. He stood up. Alone. No master. No school. No approval. Just a sword. And a question that would follow him for the rest of his life. What remains when everything is taken away? That boy was Miyamoto Musashi. And the answer he found took him 61 duels to prove. 0 defeats. Not one. But the 61st duel is not the story. The story is the morning before the first one. A 16-year-old boy, alone in a field, no opponent, no audience, no consequence. He made a command to himself. Do not move until the sun has fully risen. Simple. The body obeyed for 40 seconds. Then, shift. Adjust. Just slightly. He noticed it. Not the movement. The negotiation that came before the movement. The tiny internal voice that said just this once, before his body had even decided. That scared him. Not because the task was hard. Because he realized his own mind would not follow a simple command. And if his mind would not obey him in silence, what would it do? When a sword was at his throat. That was the real duel. Not steel against steel. Authority against resistance. Years later, Musashi would write something inside the Book of 5 Rings. Not as advice. As a warning. He had watched warriors, trained warriors, fall in seconds, not because they were slow, not because they were weak, because they arrived to the duel already fighting themselves. Confused rhythm, he called it. The body moving one direction, the mind pulling another. A warrior in confused rhythm defeats himself before any opponent arrives. He was not writing about swords. He was writing about your morning. The moment the alarm sounds and two versions of you appear, one that moves, one that negotiates. Confused rhythm. The duel begins there, not later, there. But here's where it goes deeper. There was a moment, Musashi recorded it himself, where something changed inside him. He was mid-duel, opponent moving, sword already rising, and he noticed he had already responded before the thought completed. There was no commander, no soldier, no should I move left or right. There was only the movement. Mushin. Empty mind. Not empty like hollow, empty like water that takes the shape of whatever it enters, without resistance, without negotiation, without the half-second delay where doubt lives. He had trained the gap closed. The gap between decision and movement. That gap is where most people lose everything. And this is the part most people who talk about Musashi never reach. The year was 1645. Musashi was 60 years old. He walked into Reigando cave, alone. No student beside him, no sword at his hip, no audience waiting outside, just stone walls, cold air, a dying fire, and a brush in his hand. He was 7 days from death. He knew it. And in those 7 days, he did not write about victory. He did not write about technique. He wrote 21 sentences. His entire life reduced to 21 sentences. One of them was 4 words. He put the brush down, looked at what he had written. Do nothing which is of no use. Think about what that costs. The conversation that leads nowhere, no use. The plan you rewrite instead of execute, no use. The motivation you wait for before moving, no use. A dying man in a cold cave with 7 days left, still practicing the same law he had practiced at 16. No matter what. There is something the Bushido code understood that modern life has completely forgotten. A warrior did not decide who he was during the battle. That decision was already made before the enemy arrived, before the fear came, before the morning felt impossible. He did not rise to the pressure. He fell to the level of what he had already built. Identity decided in advance, not I will be disciplined when I feel ready, but I have already decided who I am. And that decision removes the negotiation entirely. You do not rise to your habits. You fall to the level of your identity. The question is never, how do I become more consistent? The question is, who have I already decided to be? Now bring this to your own life. Tomorrow morning, the alarm sounds. In the darkness before your eyes fully open, there is a moment, half a second, maybe less. Everything is decided there. In that half second, one version of you reaches for the phone, scrolls, drifts, loses the morning before it began. Another version sits up. Not because it is easy, not because motivation arrived, because the decision was already made the night before in silence, with no audience, no applause, no one watching. No matter what. That half second is the duel. How small must the training be? Small enough that failure feels almost impossible. Musashi did not begin with 61 duels. He began with, do not move until the sun rises. 40 seconds of stillness. That was the first battlefield. Not a mountain. Not a monastery. Not a dramatic transformation. 40 seconds. Your training begins smaller than that. One alarm. No negotiation. Feet on the floor. That is it. Not the whole morning, not the whole routine. One command. Followed. Because identity is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in the ones so small they barely register. Musashi did not become undefeatable in battle. He became undefeatable in 10,000 ordinary mornings before any battle existed. The battle simply revealed what was already built. When the opponent arrived, Musashi had nothing left to decide. The decision was made at 16 in an empty field with no one watching. Renewed every single morning after that. No matter what. You will fall. Not once. Many times. The morning will come where the command is given and the body does not move. Where the negotiation wins. Where you lose the duel before the sun rises. That is not the end. What happens next morning is everything. The warrior does not return with explanation. Does not return with guilt. Does not return with a better plan. He returns as if absence never happened. Feet on the floor, same command. No matter what, the fall is not the end. The return is everything. You came here exhausted, tired of starting, tired of stopping, tired of being the person who almost made it. That person is not who you are. That was someone who had not yet made the decision. The habit does not break. You simply outgrow it. Not force, direction, not willpower, alignment, not dramatic change. One moment repeated, no matter what. Just you. Alone, no audience. The distance between decision and movement closing. This is Kuro discipline. Subscribe, not for motivation, but for the kind of understanding that makes motivation unnecessary. Because when identity is decided, the habit was already broken before you began. Master your mind. Control your life. Silence is power. Decided. Unbreakable. Now.